Breaking news tonight, champion cyclist Lance Armstrong had until midnight to contest the career-shattering doping charges brought against him by the country's highest sports authority. This evening, Armstrong announced he would give up his years-long fight against what he called an unconstitutional witch hunt. One of America's most revered athletes, a cancer survivor and crusader, Armstrong will now be banned from cycling for life and stripped of his Tour de France titles. Here's ABC's Neil Karlinski.
It's being called one of the greatest frauds in the history of sport.
Armstrong just confirmed his Tour de France win.
Lance Armstrong guilty of using performance-enhancing drugs to cheat his way to the top, according to the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. Armstrong will now face a lifetime ban from all elite-level sports and the stripping of his Tour titles, according to USADA, after he announced he would no longer fight the charges. In a statement tonight, he writes, "Enough is enough. Today I turn the page. I will no longer address this issue, regardless of the circumstances," adding that he is innocent, but believes the process is one-sided and unfair.
What does it say? Does it say that Lance Armstrong knew that he couldn't win? Does it say that deep down inside that he thinks he's guilty? There's so many questions that are left unanswered tonight.
So if he used drugs, as USADA claims, how did he do it? A former teammate, widely believed to be one of the Armstrong witnesses, Jonathan Vaughters, confessed his own doping in a New York Times editorial just 2 weeks ago, writing, "When I was racing in the 1990s and early 2000s, the rules were easily circumvented by any and all." Convicted doper Floyd Landis was another Armstrong teammate.
And you saw him using EPO?
I had, yeah. Also received some from him. Rather than go into entire detail of every single time I've seen it, yes, I saw Lance Armstrong using drugs.
Armstrong always boasted he was the most tested athlete in sports history, but that may not have been quite true. This was his lawyer talking to Nightline in 2010.
It's around 300 separate tests that he's undergone, and he has never had a positive test. As we say in Texas, the proof's in the pudding.
Armstrong retired after that, yet just 2 years later in court filings, his attorneys had doubled the number, saying he'd faced 500 to 600 drug tests without a single positive. One of the earliest bits of doping evidence reportedly came in a hospital room in 1996 when he was recovering from cancer. A former teammate's wife, Betsy Andreu, testified under oath that Armstrong told doctors he'd used drugs on the bike.
And Lance, holding his IV, looking down, rattled off EPO, testosterone, steroids, growth hormone, cortisone, and that was my introduction to performance-enhancing drugs in the sport of cycling.
The hospital room story would become a sore spot for Armstrong, wrapped up in litigation in a civil case by a company that sought to avoid paying him a bonus by accusing him of cheating.
How could it have taken place when I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs? How could that have happened?
That was my point. It's not just simply you don't recall.
How many times do I have to say it?
I'm just trying to make sure your testimony is clear.
Well, if it can't be any clearer than I've never taken drugs, then incidents like that could never have happened.
The Anti-Doping Agency also claims Armstrong used fear, intimidation, and coercion in an attempt to enforce a code of silence. To that point, federal investigators reportedly seized upon this recorded phone conversation from 2004.
So many people protecting him that it's just sickening, you know?
It was made by former Tour winner Greg LeMond, who says he's talking to Armstrong's Oakley eyewear liaison Stephanie McIlvaine, a former Armstrong friend and, in public, a supporter.
And the part that me off about the whole thing, even if we were close right now, it's how many people he has given false hope to. And I think that is the most disgusting thing ever.
For some in the cancer community, cheating on the bike is outweighed by good done in the real world. In the sport of cycling, Armstrong's fall is just another headache. Since his reign, so many close rivals have been caught up in doping scandals, no one can figure out who gets the Tour de France wins that Armstrong may now have to forfeit. I'm Neil Karlinski for Nightline in Seattle.